Welcome to the DVERT Brief. I'm Dr. Meg McBride, Director of the Domestic Violent Extremism Research and Translation Center at CNA. This podcast series highlights new research, trends, and findings on violent extremism in America. Designed for policymakers, practitioners, and anyone curious about the evolving domestic threat landscape, this AI-generated podcast delivers concise and accessible summaries of our latest work. Thanks for listening.
In today's episode, we'll be exploring key insights from our report, BTAM. There are no typical cases. Let's dive in.
So today's report has a pretty striking title. What does it actually mean in practice?
At its core, the report shows that when it comes to behavioral threat assessment and management, BTAM, there's no single predictable pathway for how concerns about potential targeted violence emerge, get reported, or get handled. The findings are based on a year-long evaluation of violence prevention efforts in Wood County, Ohio, specifically focused on juveniles.
And this is happening in the context of new policy, right?
Exactly. Ohio's House Bill 123 requires every school serving grades 6 through 12 to have a BTAM team and a threat assessment plan. That created a real need at the local level, not just to identify concerning behavior, but to figure out what happens after a concern is raised, who gets involved, what resources are available, and how do systems actually work together.
So what did the evaluation find when it looked at real cases?
One of the biggest takeaways is that referrals into the prevention network were highly variable. Even 2 years into building county-level coordination, there was no systematic way cases entered the system. Some came from schools, others from classmates, online bystanders, residential advisors, or even news reports.
That's surprising. I would have thought there might be a standard tip line or something.
Right, but the report shows that the source of the warning wasn't always the source of the referral. In some cases, schools reached out directly. In others, federal partners or county agencies became aware of a case indirectly. And importantly, not all referrals were high risk. Some were about getting faster access to services, while others were so high risk that they never reached the county network at all because they were immediately handled as criminal matters.
The report includes examples, right?
Yes, and they really drive the point home. In one case, a youth was observed searching online for mass casualty content, and the case came to attention through federal channels. In another, classmates reported direct threats and attempted gun acquisition. In a third, the county's Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board learned about a threat from news coverage. These cases might look similar on paper, but how they surfaced was completely different.
And once cases reached the network, were they handled the same way?
Not at all. The report shows that network involvement varied dramatically. Different combinations of schools, mental health providers, hospitals, law enforcement, federal partners, and county agencies were involved, depending on the case. Because each school had its own approach to BTAM, county-level actors had to constantly adapt.
That sounds messy, but that's life, right?
Exactly. One of the key insights is that variability isn't a flaw, it's a reality. The danger comes when systems assume there should be a single, standardized process. The report warns that rigid, prescriptive models don't work in this environment.
So what does this mean for policymakers and practitioners?
The report highlights two major implications. First, local prevention networks need flexible processes. County-level systems have to be able to operate across different school cultures, tools, and thresholds for concern. Flexibility isn't optional, it's essential.
And the second?
Recognizing and leveraging expertise wherever it exists. Because these cases are relatively rare, experience accumulates unevenly. Some organizations see multiple cases and build deep expertise, while others may only encounter one. The report emphasizes the importance of intentionally pulling in that expertise, even if it sits outside a specific school, district, or county.
That feels like a big shift in how we think about prevention, not as a checklist, but as a network.
That's exactly right. The central message is that effective prevention depends on adaptive networks, not typical cases or one-size-fits-all responses. If systems expect predictability, they're likely to miss warning signs or fail to support individuals appropriately.
And why does this research matter right now?
Because more states and localities are adopting BTAM requirements, this report offers a grounded, real-world look at what implementation actually looks like and what it takes to make these systems work before violence occurs. This podcast was produced with the assistance of artificial intelligence tools, but the content was based on research done by the DVERT Center, which is housed within CNA, a nonprofit research and analysis organization dedicated to advancing the safety and security of the nation. The research on which this podcast is based was supported by the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. Adaptation of this research for the DVERT Brief was supported by the National Institute of Justice under award number 15PNIJ24GK00750DOMR. The opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect those of DHS, S&T, or the Department of Justice.